When I was still something of a sophomore baby Catholic, fairly newly converted, I watched the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose with my girlfriend, who is now my wife. And there was something in the plot about 3 a.m. being a time of day in which demons were especially active because it's the inversion, supposedly, of the hour in which Jesus died for the redemption of the world. And I vividly recall pausing the movie at that point and telling my at the time girlfriend that when I was in RCIA, or I think they call it OCIA now, but initiation for adults into the Catholic Church, I used to wake up at 3 a.m. on the dot consistently until I mentioned it to my spiritual director, who told me that I should start praying the Chaplet of Divine Mercy. So I did, and then the 3 a.m. wakings stopped. But after hearing this explanation in the movie, I got admittedly super freaked out because I hadn't heard this claim before, and as someone who was still pretty terrified by the mere fact that demons exist, I remember saying to my girlfriend, if I wake up tonight at 3 a.m., I am going to freak out. And you have to also understand that I had just moved out into a really sketchy neighborhood, into this old spider-infested house on my own for the first time, so I'll admit, I was feeling a little vulnerable. So after the movie ended, she went home and I went to bed, and sure enough, that night, I woke up in the middle of the night and I remembered what I had said. But I had a tactic. I convinced myself that if I don't look at the clock, then it doesn't count. I won't know and it won't matter. And I can just go back to sleep, oblivious and ignorant. But that little psychological game, it didn't work because I kept thinking, well, what if it is 3 o'clock? Then I'm just a sitting duck here in my bed while the demons surround me in the dark. So I reluctantly rolled over to look at the clock, and sure enough, 3:00. And I was true to my word. I freaked out. I threw off my blankets, ran out onto the front step outside, and spent a good amount of time praying the rosary until I was brave enough to go back inside. And to be honest, this was generally the degree of terror that demonic threat had on me. I saw the original Exorcist when I was a kid, and it scared the actual atheism out of me. I couldn't think of anything more horrific than ending up like the girl in that movie. But eventually, I came across the biography of Saint Anthony the Great, written by Saint Athanasius, who is traditionally considered one of the holiest men who ever lived. And that book, it depicts the life of a hermit living in the wilderness by himself, who was constantly under attack by actual demons who would physically manifest in his cave and assault him regularly. The devil himself would even show up and try to tempt him and to negotiate with him. And not only was St. Anthony not afraid of them, he was generally unimpressed by them. He spoke down to them, commanded them at times, and reduced them to the pathetic rank that they now occupy in the order of creation. And I frankly found that inspiring. Something about his example robbed me of my fear of demons. Let me pause for a second and point out that when I planned on making this video with this reference to St. Anthony, I did so without knowing that today, as I'm filming it, is the feast of that very same St. Anthony, which as I was doing my morning prayers and devotions, knowing what I was doing today, I couldn't help but be a little dumbstruck by that fact. So St. Anthony, thank you for the inspiration and ora pro nobis. But for a time after reading that book, I half expected to see little demons hiding around every corner. Every time I turned the light on in the bathroom, a small part of me thought, is there going to be one sitting there waiting to harass me on the toilet? But every time I would turn the corner to flip the light on, nothing. And I went on thinking, I must be just one of those lucky people who doesn't have to deal with that kind of thing in my spiritual walk. At no point did I think to myself, the fact that I don't ever suffer that kind of harassment from demons isn't some indication of my degree of communion with God, or my lack of, rather. If anything, it shows that God must favor me in some way. And the reality is, most people in the developed, prosperous Western world don't seem to have any vivid encounters with spiritual beings like St. Anthony did. And even when people we know say things like, I once saw a ghost, most of us just nod along as if we're playing some kind of game, but few of us actually believe them. And if demons do exist, because I'm sure not all of my viewers agree that they do, it's fairly common among Christian thinkers and writers that it's to their advantage, and perhaps a kind of demonic strategy, to make themselves scarce in prosperous, educated societies like the one that I live in. The demon Screwtape in C.S. Lewis's classic novel about demonic tempters appeals to the advantage they have when humans don't take them seriously. The devil in Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov makes similar coy allusions, and poet Charles Baudelaire famously wrote, "The finest trick of the devil is to persuade you that he does not exist." Vivid demonic encounters are rare and apparently part of the strategy, because the effect of the inconspicuousness of demons and their prince is that most of us tend to conclude they just don't exist, because our experience suggests as much. And from that experience, not only do we conclude that demons don't exist, but neither does anything of a supernatural or spiritual nature exist either. We're just matter in motion until the motion stops, and then that's it. That's the end of the line. And if demons can persuade us to that conclusion, it obviously would be to their advantage, because they could continue to work on us in more subtle ways, tempting us to meander down the tranquilizing and reassuring road to hell. And this might help to explain the paradox of someone like St. Anthony suffering from persistent demonic manifestation. You'd think that his holiness would repel them and reduce their presence in his life, but the opposite was apparently true. And St. Anthony wasn't alone. St. Jean Vianney, St. Padre Pio, St. Teresa of Avila, St. Catherine of Siena, they all suffered unambiguous encounters with demonic spirits who harassed, tempted, or even physically assaulted them. You'd think these holy men and women would be spared because of their holiness, but it seems the opposite is true. The holier and closer to God you are, apparently the more likely you will come under this kind of attack by demons. St. Ignatius of Loyola famously proposed a formula for the discernment of spirits. He said that when you are living in sin, separated from God, demons will promote your ease and comfort because they want to affirm you where you are. They want to encourage you to keep going in that direction. They want you to think you're doing everything right, and that's why you're rewarded with such tranquility. Why? Because they're playing the long game to securing your soul. God, however, will use adversity to convince you otherwise, to alert you to the fact that you need to get out of this bad situation you're in. But once you listen to God and start to move in the right direction, start living in a state of grace, start seeking his mercy and sanctification, that's when demons will try to trip you up with adversities, because they don't want you moving in that direction. And they will do so most commonly through spiritual attack. You might not have to tolerate a demon hitting you over the head with a stick while you try to sleep, but they will use more subtle tactics. They might initiate a campaign of temptation by persistently suggesting evil thoughts to you and preying upon your weaknesses. They can attack you psychologically, producing depression, anxiety, and despair. They can also assail people who have influence in your life, so that, I don't know, your boss, your teacher, your spouse, or your friends, they become more hostile, more belligerent, more irritable because of the mental or spiritual distress that they are suffering, all because a demon might be trying to get at you. They can even influence or produce certain natural outcomes. Imagine a pilot who is entirely captured by demonic influence, who is compelled to do something stupid while flying a commercial plane. Imagine a safety inspector whose judgment is clouded by demonic influence. Imagine an important governing official who has his or her judgment impaired by demonic influence, creating like a cascade of catastrophic reactions to their clumsy mistakes. Simply put, demons can orchestrate a very bad day for a lot of people without ever revealing themselves. And they prefer not to reveal themselves, because if they did, it would be so frightening, so startling, that it would cause most people to seek spiritual remedies like prayer and reconciliation with God. So what would it take to get them to reveal themselves? In the case of holy saints like Anthony, it's probably a last resort when they have nothing left to lose. They know that he's so far gone in the camp of their enemy, in God's possession, that the other methods like temptation, they'll be futile. They know that causing him to have a bad day won't make much of a difference, because he's so accustomed to depriving himself of creature comforts that his patience will persevere over such trivialities. So with nothing left to lose, they manifest to his senses and go on the attack, if for no other reason than the satisfaction of abusing him while he's still accessible to them, because they know that eventually he will be out of their reach. But for everyone else, they don't have to use up their last resort. For everyone else, they still have options available to them to secure their souls. So if you're someone who never suffers spiritual attacks, it might be worth considering that they're leaving you alone because they've got you exactly where they want you. Okay, thanks for watching. These videos and this channel are only possible because of viewer support. So if you can spare some help, please consider making a contribution through my website at brianholdsworth.ca or join my locals community at brianholdsworth.locals.com, where you can interact with myself and other like-minded individuals. We actually just started a monthly Zoom meetup where we're studying some articles of St. Thomas Aquinas in his Summa. So if that's interesting to you, then come join us there. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe.